Welcome to the Organizational Maneuverability Radio Show, defying gravity so your team can soar at altitude, with host Marshall Goldsmith, Executive Coach Randy Swaim.
Well, hello. This is Executive Coach Randy Swaim, Marshall Goldsmith, Executive Coach, and welcome to the our radio show, the Organizational Maneuverability Radio Show. And today, I will just say that I'm very welcome to have back on the show on this episode my friend and colleague, Stephen Wood, who's got some expertise relative to neuroscience and stuff as I do. And so it's great to have him on. And so I'll just take let him take a minute of introduction. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of dive into the concept that he's going to be bringing, which is very aligned. I think most people realize that the organizational maneuverability concept that's trademarked for me out of Washington is very aligned with leading your teams in an unpredictable, VUCA challenging environment, you know, where things are not always predictable. So he'll bring a good point that's very aligned with that. And it's also aligned with the neuroscience knowledge that we both have. So I'll just take that as just initially introducing the show today. And I'll say, Steve, honored to have you back on the show again today, and we'll look forward to having you on again. But just welcome here, and I'll let you take a minute if you want to introduce to anybody that's listening. Just introduce yourself just briefly, and then we'll get going.
Hey, how you going, Randy?
Good.
Good to be with you again.
Yes.
So, well, we've sort of already had one catch up, and we spoke briefly about the conscious and subconscious mind. And this week, I thought we'd sort of touch on autopilot. But my interest in this and neuroscience really started from, you know, I'm not saying at a young age, but definitely, you know, in my 20s when I started working, and you know, I saw the challenges within organizations to get people together or to get them pointed in the one direction for a common cause. So over the years, I've, you know, met lots of successful athletes. I was in TV industry as a producer, director, and executive for a long time, and it always amazed me how, particularly with sports people and athletes, even actors and performers, how there was a group that stood out and there was another group that appeared to have as equal ability and talent that seemed to just not quite make the mark. And that fascinated me, and I wanted to find out really what was the difference. And
interesting.
It wasn't external, it's all internal. It's all about the way we think. So that's what's led me to pursue this, because I think we're looking at a world at the moment where there's a lot going on, and you know, some people are struggling, particularly in organizations. You know, we're putting them under a lot of pressure and strain at the moment, and there needs to be a better way.
You know what? You're absolutely correct in that, because that is very common in industries today, both civilian and also like in aviation and things like that. When you mentioned autopilot, that's a good analogy with that. So yeah, it's good. You mentioned that there were some things, and I'll let you get more deeper into that here in just a second. But you mentioned that when you're around 20 or something, you saw some things that really stood out to you that caused you to really kind of pursue knowledge in that area. Is there anything that really stands out to you that says, oh yeah, that was a picture of it or whatever? Was there anything that kind of comes to your mind right now on what that experience was like?
Good question.
Thank you.
when you at 20, obviously you're still sort of finding your way and developing it, you know, working out which direction you're going. But so I touched on last time, you know, when I was about 19 or 20, I decided that I wanted to learn to fly, and I I did have some of those self-doubts. Oh, can I do this? Is this possible? And I think I might have told you last time that one of the turning points, although I didn't really realise it till later, was that day when the instructor hopped out of the plane, closed the door, and said, "See you later." And
welcome to solo.
Welcome to solo. And I didn't think that I was ready. I didn't think that I was good enough. I didn't even know whether I could do it. But there was something instinctive in me that just pushed that throttle forward. And I took off, and there was something in me that just went, okay, you're the only one that can do this now. And I just started replaying everything that had been instilled in me, get to 1,000 feet, turn left.
Yeah.
And I'm still here today to talk about it. And I think that was a key thing for me. And just, okay, what's the next step? And, what else is it that I can, achieve?
Interesting. Well, that's good. Go ahead.
So we want to get into autopilot.
Sure. And that's a good point for what you're talking about, I think. So go ahead, and I'll let you kind of share that a little bit.
So just for people get a little bit shocked when you start talking about autopilot, and to start off with, autopilot sort of refers to that tendency for us to make decisions and perform routine actions without any active conscious thought. So over time, I think the best example is, when you learn to drive a car. When you learn to drive a car, you go, how am I ever going to do this? I've got to, look at where I'm going. I've got to put my foot on the clutch, or I've got to put it into gear or take it off. I've got to use the indicator. I've got to, start this thing on. And it all seems overwhelming until you're just a little way down the track and you can master it. And then not long after that, you can hop in a car and you can drive without really thinking about it. And we've all probably experienced that thing of hopping in the car and going somewhere and arriving, I don't really know how I got here. It just all happened. And so that's a great example of autopilot and how we learn things. We store them away in our subconscious mind, and when we recall them, they just happen. Now, the figure that really staggers people is that we spend an average of 95% of our day in autopilot. And when I talk to a group about this, I go, well, I don't know where you got your research from, but that's definitely not me. And I say, okay, let's just step it through from when you wake up in the morning. Just autopilot will play out in lots of different ways. But if people are looking to change things, they think they might be a little bit stuck, they want to achieve more, they want to get more out of life, you can't do it by doing the same things every day. I say, let's just step through what happens on a daily basis. So the alarm clock goes off, you get out of bed, you go to the bathroom, you have a shower and get ready for work. You know what clothes you're going to wear, you know what you like for breakfast, you know how you're going to get to work, the car, the train, the bus. You arrive at your workplace, you know what your job is, you generally, you know the people within the organisations, you know the ones that are going to cooperate, you know the ones that are going to provide support for you, the ones that are going to create some trouble. You know, like the dynamic within meetings. You know where you're going to go and get your lunch or have your snack. And then the same routine plays out in the afternoon. then you go home and where your house is, probably what you're going to have for dinner, because there's half a dozen things that you really like. Mm-hmm. And then you sit down and you watch TV, or you do whatever you do in the evening, and you do that day in, day out. Now, that sort of helps explain for people exactly. I go, oh my goodness, that's exactly what I do. Mm-hmm. Now, the important, if you're spending 95%, and these, look, all this research is very flexible. There's some say that it's actually more than 95%, but it really means that we're only using our conscious thought 5% of the time.
That's right.
Now, this is not all bad, because the subconscious mind is really powerful, and you wouldn't want to learn how to drive the car every day. You wouldn't want to learn how to do your job every day, or you want to learn everybody's name every day. So the autopilot in that sense is very powerful, and it's very convenient. The stumbling block, particularly within organizations, is what part of this autopilot is not serving me? What is it that is holding me back? Because part of the process of learning all these automated things that get us through the day is they can form these habitual patterns, and we get stuck in this routine. So when it comes to challenging ourselves or stepping out of our comfort zones, we drop back into this familiar area.
Yeah.
So what I find when I go to organizations is they've tried a lot of training. They want to try and give people skills. They want to improve processes. But the thing that underlies it all is what people believe about themselves. And this is part of the autopilot. When you're on autopilot for long enough, you get comfortable in this routine, and you've built up a belief about what you think you're capable of, where you fit within an organization, even, what your worth is, how much can I be paid, or am I being paid? Is that really my worth?
Yeah.
So you can see that it's sort of, I don't like to call it complex. Then if you took this whole
it is
about autopilot, there's part of it that serves us, and there's part of it that doesn't. And it's the part that does it that we really need to
and it's interesting the way you said that as an analogy. When you're in a F4 flying across the ocean, and you're just going to be at one altitude for the next 3 hours, guess what? Autopilot works good. But what happens when something unusual and unexpected comes on when you're trying to come into an airport to land, or right after takeoff, or something like that? So very aligned with what you just said, because there are times when that autopilot mindset can help for short periods of time.
Yeah.
But are you aware of what level you're depending on it, and not growing yourself or your team? And it's a good question when you're going along with kind of what you're talking about there. No two ways about it.
Yeah. That is absolutely correct. And the reason that as I said, the experience that I've had in organizations, before I go in there, they go, you know what, we've tried everything. We've had this training, we've had that training, but nothing seems to improve the performance. And one of the reasons is that in trying to make the organization efficient, they've endorsed the autopilot in a way. And so people have got comfortable, and they've really constrained their potential for growth.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about, breaking that, first of all, breaking that down and finding out you can imagine if you've got, I don't know, 50, 100 people in an organization,
Mm-hmm.
and they've all got a different concept of themselves built on this autopilot. What is my real potential? And you even hear people say it all you have to do is listen to people often that I can't do this. I'm not a good writer. I'm no good at maths, so I'd never be able to, be a public speaker. And the fact is that none of that is true.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of, believing that you can do it and doing it on a repetitive basis. And before you know it, you can make amazing changes, within a week. You've probably seen pilots that start off with, not much skill at all. And within a week, they're confident.
Doing good. Yeah. And, it's interesting because like you said, a lot of people, one of the risks that comes into play sometimes when you're talking about the autopilot mindset is you have somebody that says, okay, this 70% level, that's my success.
Yeah.
What's keeping it from being 80%? And so if you were working with or coaching a team in an organization or something like that, or maybe coaching the leader of a team in an organization, and you found that was that autopilot mindset was more pronounced maybe than it needs to be, what are some ways that you would maybe question them or have them really start to experience some of the possibilities that were there? What maybe some questions you might ask, or how would you get them thinking about that?
Well, I think one of the interesting things is quite often I don't have to question them, because if you just enter into a conversation, whatever they're and they get challenged, whatever they're talking about is what they're believing about themselves. So if they have it, it just, the mind is amazing. We're speaking what we're thinking, and if someone is hesitant, if someone thinks that this is not for me, they'll say it, and that's the trigger to go, well, why do you believe that? What is it that's you don't believe that you'd be a good manager or a good leader or great to be in the team that is creating innovation. And so it's sort of like showing the path.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we don't have, there's a lot of complicated processes and things that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
The way I like to explain it is that you're actually, and one of the ways is that you've got to just start thinking and feeling and creating different emotions about what success would look and feel like. But we're already, in a way, with our speech, hypnotizing ourselves into believing that we can't do it just by going, this is too hard, I've never done it before, I'd never be good at that, I've never been good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe yes, there needs to be a passion there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could just change that language, because if you're repeating that over and over and over and over every day, that's autopilot, and that's programming the subconscious till you believe that it's absolutely not possible for you to earn more money, live in a better house, contribute to the organization. Whereas if you just change that inner speech, you start hypnotizing yourself in a positive way. So I think the other thing that's really important, and you obviously see this as well, Randy,
Uh-huh.
that within organizations, we're in a period now where technology is going off the Richter scale. Growth is, you need to be on the cutting edge if you're in a business and you're going to be competitive. And the only way that you can do that is if you have staff and a team that is using their minds for innovation and creativity and
Yes,
problem solving. And you can't do that while you're in autopilot.
that's right. And, there have been a number of times through my career in aviation and out of aviation where I've asked a question or two, and it made everybody that was around went, whoa, and it kind of broke through the autopilot just a little bit as they started thinking about it. But you're right. It's an aspect that is holding us back for sure if we're kind of totally relying on that.
And of course, we're talking about the individuals within the organization, but don't forget that the organization as a whole can also have this attitude that, our organization represents this is where we fit in the market. These are the things that we produce, and that's our lot.
Yeah.
Rather than taking the attitude, well, what will it take for us to expand or grow or take on, new technology or think outside the box. So it's all very well to, focus on the teams and the staff, but the executives, CEOs, they need to be looking at what their beliefs are as well.
Yeah.
And I've found over time, and I think this is really interesting, is that if you're an executive that has climbed up the ranks, you have a certain expertise, you're acknowledged. Quite often, executives don't want to risk that image.
Yeah.
So if they take a risk or they step outside of the box or they innovative and it doesn't work, they're worried that it might reflect on that image of who they are.
Yeah. And, you think about it too, a lot of what you're talking about there, particularly when you're talking about the executive level in an organization, a lot of that has to do with how you really got clarity on your vision. And part of your vision is, where we're wanting to go, how are we wanting to break through the ceiling and make this happen? What's that going to take? But it's also, what do we need to be doing and aligning in such a way that our people are so developed that when we're not standing there with them, they can get it done. And all of those, when you talk about that strategic aspect of it, is part of what the highest level of people need to kind of be modeling and helping people to see the value of it, both of the people that work for them, but also when they go out and they connect with clients. I remember one time when I was asked to come back full time with the aviation training organization a number of years ago, quite a few years ago, the manager pulled me aside and he said, "I'm wondering if you're interested in coming back full time." And I said, "Well, possibly. Let's sit down and talk about it." And he said, "You're the top of my list." I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And he looked at me. He said, "You bring skills that nobody else does."
Yeah.
And I went, "Really?" And that insight on his part, I was bringing the coaching skills and some of that leadership aspect of it, and that's very different than a lot of other people. And so, like you said, even at the executive level, do you have insights on how you want that to be a part of your company, but also how are you modeling that in your team so that they can really grow and break through the Autopilot and really accomplish some amazing stuff.
Yeah, and of course, having a vision is really important. But there's like another question that's got to go with that. Or, okay, this is where I want to take the organization, or this is what I want to achieve in my, personal career.
Yeah.
But what's the underlying handbrake that could stop me from doing that? What are the beliefs and the behaviors? Behaviors is a big one, because whatever you're thinking is rolling out in your life.
Yeah.
What are the things that could take me off course in this vision, and how do I correct those? How do I, deal with those maybe first?
Yeah. And how do I model it for my team so they start to see and experience the value of it, and they start to kind of come alongside everything. And so all of that is a big part of that, for sure. Like you said, it's not just going through road academic things, which is typically putting on the autopilot and then going and getting some coffee kind of thing. Yeah. It's, to what extent are you engaged and have that vision and really getting it to true success by breaking free of the autopilot. And guess what? Just as pilots, and you know this, Steve, just as pilots, sometimes you can make good things happen when you're on autopilot. And to what extent does your brain, as you're kind of suggesting correctly so, have to become online, so that even if you're still thinking of your autopilot within your team a little bit, you can see about how we need to make the autopilot bring us up here or whatever, kind of thing, just as a thought.
Well, I'd never thought about that before, but you make a really interesting point, is that in that case where you're familiar with your surroundings, you know what you're doing, so let's just say you're on autopilot. The mind should be in a sort of very comfortable and relaxed state, and that is the best state for the mind to start being creative. The other big thing with organizations is the amount of pressure that people under to perform. And of course, we know through neuroscience that the frontal lobe of the brain, where all the intuition, problem solving, creativity is, under stress, the blood drains away from that frontal lobe to you're ready to run, fight, or hide.
Yeah.
And so we're going off track a little bit here, but one of the other things that I see in organizations is you just got to wind back the desperation, the pressure, and the stress, because if you want to dig yourself out of this hole, you want to be more competitive or creative, people have got to be in a state where they can do it. So to your point about being in autopilot and then taking time to go, you know what, asking yourself the question, what else is it can I do? How else can I contribute to the organization? Identifying things that need fixing in the organization, and be that person to, put those ideas forward.
Yeah. And, all that is so key when you're talking about the mental aspect of the autopilot, kind of thing. And how are you really going to help people overcome? All of that is huge. And I know it's a good thought and everything. And I know we're kind of getting a little bit close to our time, but a very good, valuable point. And, one of the things, and it's very aligned with what you said, I can't remember if I ever shared this with you, but this was, this was about 17 years ago. But because he knew my military background, there was a guy that was going to go into the Marines and fly in the Marines. And his parents asked me if I would have lunch with him, and we did, and we met. And after about an hour, we were standing on my front porch, and I looked at him and I said, "But there's one question you want to ask yourself." And he said, "What's that?" I said, "Before I ask you," I said, "because nobody else can answer this for you. You got to answer yourself." I said, "Take a look at your watch." And he did. And I said, what is the time and the date right now? And he told me, and I said, if you decide to do this, it's possible that 3 to 5 years from right now, you'll be flying your F-18 in bad guy territory and you see a missile coming up to shoot you down. I said, you have to know that even if it's in the last 30 seconds of your life, you have to know that you can perform at 100%.
Yeah.
Even at that miss. And so, like you said, there are factors that sometimes come into play that's not just road academic and not strictly autopilot. But like you said, even when you're on autopilot, do we have that vision that can kind of help us really see where we need to go? What's something that I didn't think about before that I need to plan for, and all that? All that's kind of a part of what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And
cool.
I think that, just to sort of wrap it up, I think, for people listening to this, if it sort of, resonates with you, one of the, if you can't sort of, well, what is it that I need to fix, or what is it that, is not working for me now? You just need to look back and see how whatever the thing is that's preventing you, whatever the pattern that's inhibiting your progress, will it's reflective. So all you have to do is look back in your life to see where it's repeated itself, because it'll keep on coming up. Every time you reach a point that you think you're not capable of stepping over, you'll step back, and then it'll come up again, and you'll step back. And I know this for a fact because it was one of the things that I had to deal with. Self-sabotaging myself.
Yeah. Well, you have my compliments on overcoming that because that is key. What you just said is very critical. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I'll tell you what, anything you want to say in conclusion for the point, a very good concept today. Anything you want to say sort of in conclusion for today before we close up?
Look, I think the only thing I'd say is that whether it's the CEO of an organization or whether you're a member of a team, just really think about what it is that's just holding you back. That you hear people say, I wish I could do this, or I wish I had this, or I wish, and you don't have to wish. You just have to,
good point. Good point.
You just have to overcome the obstacle of what it is that makes you believe that you're not worthy of, a higher position, more money, better qualifications. I mean, there's never been a better time to go and, get training, to go and do a course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even just, sometimes I advise people, just take time to look around where you work and see how you can add value. What are the things that are missing? How can you stand out? How can you take something and change it? There's a whole lot you can do, but step out of the chaos of the pressure of the autopilot, and take time just to observe.
I saw a post this week, and I actually shared it on my social media stuff, but it was very interesting what you just said. It says, there's no reality and vision until you make it real. Kind of thing. And I went, you know what? That's very aligned with what you've been saying. No two ways about it. Well, cool. Well, I'll tell you what, Steve, anything you want to share about yourself before we close up real quick?
I think I'm all wrapped up now.
Okay, sounds good. Well, listen, I'll just tell all the listeners that it's been an honor to have Steve Wood on the show. He's going to be on again because we've got a couple of other episodes for sure that he's going to bring some topics on. But I'm very honored to be a friend of his and a colleague in neuroscience. And Steve, we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thanks very much, Randy. Catch you next time.
Take care.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.